Welcome back to the Star Wars Newsnet's Timeline Show. Brian, we are in episode 9 of the Timeline Show, and we have, last week was jam-packed with all sorts
Huge
of
episode.
crossovers and everything for the Battle of Jeddah. I will say that I am the most excited I've been for an episode today because we're going to be talking about these Higher Adventures comics here in a moment first, but afterwards, we will be breaking down the book Cataclysm.
Yes.
Which is my favorite, ready for this, favorite Star Wars book of all time.
What?
I think it's my favorite Star Wars book of all time.
That's high praise.
I have thought about this for a while, and you know, it's up there. You know, that kind of changes every once in a while. Like you might have a favorite here and that. It's probably my favorite Star Wars book of all time because the High Republic just is amazing every single time. I love that era. I know we're both Lost Stars guys. Like I love Lost Stars. I love Bloodline, but honestly, I really think that Cataclysm is my number one. I have a feeling that could change based off of some of like Temptation of the Force coming out or Charles Soule's, last book or any of the another young adult novel for Phase 3, but the characters of Phase 2 just resonate with me, and I love them more than I think any other characters in book Star Wars like ever. I cannot wait to talk about this book. And I know you really like it, so it's going to be a fun conversation. It's going to be a fun conversation. Yeah. But first, we're going to break down the last 2 High Republic Adventures comics with Sav Mulligan. And I must say, I was pleasantly surprised with these 2 comics because I just kind of was just diving into the first 2, just kind of mulling my way through. It was okay, but these last 2 were really fun. Daniel Jose Older is the author behind the High Republic Adventures comics from Dark Horse. Again, this is the High Republic Phase 2. We're still in the year 382 BBY for the Timeline Show. But I mean, we're only going to be here for this week, maybe one more, and then one more episode with Path of Vengeance. And then there might be a few other, mini stories that we tie in along the way. But for the most part, these next 2 weeks are going to be the final, 382 BBY sessions. So
getting there.
How do you feel about High Republic Adventures 7 and 8? We follow Sav Mulligan, this Jedi apprentice who's now personating as a pirate. Her cover was blown basically in the end of the last comics we read. And she is going back with Maz Kanata's pirates in order to attempt to free Maz Kanata, who is now a prisoner of the Dank Cracks, who have taken over
her own castle.
Yes, they have taken over Takodana and her own castle. So my first question that I want to pose to you, because this whole High Republic Adventures, I think sometimes these little stories get lost in the grand narrative, especially this battle for Takodana probably gets lost in terms of the Phase 2 discussion because everyone's talking about the Battle of Jeddah or the Night of Sorrow, which we're going to get into later this episode. So just as a whole, just give me a quick synopsis of how you feel about like the Battle of Takodana and what happens in these comics. Like where does this kind of sit for you?
I really enjoyed it a lot. It's honestly, like you said, it's a very underrated event kind of in the High Republic Phase 2. It's nice seeing Takodana again from the sequel films and whatnot, and seeing Maz Kanata well before we ever see her in the films. But yeah, this is actually a pretty cool event considering that the Jedi at the Jedi Temple across the lake do get involved in this battle toward the end of it. So I think it's an awesome event. A lot of cool stuff to unpack in that story, which we can get into here in a minute. Especially with Sav, and there's a lot of character development there for her as well. And so, I thought it was a great event. It was a nice breather to get to that away from Battle of Jeddah stuff. I'm sure it was for you too. But it was just a fun battle to go through.
It's just fun. Like the High Republic Adventures, there's just not this big weighty, big feeling when you go into it. Like you're almost locked in when you read Cataclysm. Like you're like, oh my gosh, who's gonna die? Who's gonna not make it out? When are the Nameless gonna strike? And when you read High Republic Adventures, you can almost sit back. It's not that it's gonna be bereft of any hardship, but there is definitely that lighthearted, relax, enjoy the ride vibe to it, which honestly, when you have some of these heavy storylines from the High Republic, it's really nice to be able to sit back and relax a little bit when you're reading some of the material. I don't know if you
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
similarly.
Get a little bit of a breather, if you would, in between some of these more essential novels, if you would.
You get those like little one-liners from Daniel Jose Older, just drops in these little one-liner jokes, and that are just they're honestly, some of them are like super cheesy, but
Yeah,
they're also perfect, like Star Wars cheesy. You know,
yeah.
like it's the perfect blend of like cheesy but Star Wars acceptable, and so it's just so endearing. It's so endearing. And so Sav, she is like, let's go. We got to take back the temple. We got to fight for Maz. And she has called her master and be like, Master, we got to, storm the gates of Kakadana Castle because Maz is prisoner. Her master's like, where, first of all, who are you to think you can just disappear for days from the temple and then call demanding that we somehow muster our forces to go storm a castle for a bunch of pirates in a petty squabble? Get back here at once. And Sav like crushes the communication device. He's like, I'm coming home, all right? Like, you betcha I'm coming home. And then tells the pirates, like, let's do this. And what did you think when, they initially just kind of just stopped? The Jedi are just like, we're not interfering. Her pastor's like, we're not, her master is, oh my gosh.
It's okay.
What
It's been
a
a
week.
long week.
It's been a long week. And, well,
Um,
it's funny you say that because these drop on like Monday nights. Like, we put these out on Monday
yeah,
nights. We're like, long week, dude. It's Monday. Get over yourself.
yeah. No
Guys, we're
kidding.
recording
Yeah,
this at the end of the week. Okay,
it's
it's the end
currently
of the week.
Thursday for us, so
Thursday
yeah,
night. Like, the weekend is almost here. Your brain
it's
is
here.
about 2 seconds away from being fried. It's really it's dire times. I actually, when normally I come home from work and I go straight to the gym, like I'm like, just to try to get some energy and get a little
Right.
workout in. Today, I literally came home, collapsed on my bed for an hour and a half, and was asleep in about 2 seconds, like 2 seconds right now. And that's because,
Draining.
so it's, I'm a teacher and we're doing this little activity right now where we're splitting all of our ELA classes in thirds. And so everyone's rotating to a different ELA teacher every day. So we're teaching students we haven't taught this year. But that also means the lesson I'm teaching, I have to teach it 18 times in a row because I'm teaching the different set of kids, every day. And so
Mm-hmm.
today I finished the 12th time of teaching that lesson. So my brain was just like, I can't do one more day of this. Like, oh my goodness, this is going to be insane. All of that to say that the Jedi and her master have decided that they're not going to interfere. What did you think about that? Because I think the Jedi have been more proactive in some of these
Yeah,
instances in the High
they have.
Republic.
Honestly, we've got all of phase 1. We're in the process of phase 3 now, but it was kind of, honestly, chronologically, it's kind of the first time you see the Jedi wanting to pull back and just kind of be like, no, we're gonna worry about us more than
Right.
anybody else. And so, and I think that was a huge problem, moving into like the prequel era and and whatnot.
Right.
And so, kind of where the Jedi are closing themselves off a bit. So it's kind of like the first hints of it. And I wasn't surprised at all to find out that the Jedi Master, that Sav's Jedi Master was like, no, we're just get back here. We're across the lake. Don't worry about that. Just get back here and we'll deal with us, And so I wasn't shocked. And honestly, I felt Sav's frustration with it. I mean, she's trying to look out for. It's a lot like the Guardians of the Kyber
Wills.
from the Guardians of the Wills, right, from the Marvel comics. How they were like, no, we just need to guard the temple. We're not worried about anybody outside of it. It's very much like
that's a good comparison.
And so and
you have Tay Sarek, who's like, no, we got to do this.
Right,
And it's kind of like Sav is like the same way.
Exactly. And so you feel that frustration. She's wanting to help, the planet as a whole and to really get into this conflict and to resolve it. I totally related with her on feeling that way.
And so she's frustrated by this, and they go to the planet, and she's ready to reunite with the other pirates and launch a counterattack to take back the castle as soon as possible. But then they find out that they have just enforcer droids upon enforcer droids
Yeah.
from the graphs, of course. And it made me think, how many enforcer droids have they distributed at this point? Where are they getting all these enforcer droids? Because they gave some to the Aram soldiers. They gave some, obviously the Path
Yeah.
of the Open Hand has a ton of them. Now the Dengrax got a ton of them. Like they are over there like Newt Gunray just with enforcer
Right.
droids on lock over there. But
They
and how does
surely
no
didn't go to
one
Geonosis, you know.
right?
They sure, but if there was a droid factory on Geonosis, where else are there droid factories we don't know about?
Right. And oh my goodness, this it made me wonder, like, of course, they're a rich, uber rich family, super powerful. So of course they're gonna find a way
Right.
to get out of like galactic trouble. But at the same
Right.
time, they're still so powerful and prominent, 200, 150 years later in phase one. And it made me stop and think, did we not make the connections that this family is bad news and they are just funneling like hundreds of enforcer droids to people that are slaughtering like Jedi and other, citizens?
Money's money.
Did
Yeah.
nothing come out of this? Like, because in the other phases, it's like the graphs are like, oh yeah, it's just the graphs. They do shady stuff. They are literally supplying armies to people. It's like a little
Right.
bit beyond shady. I wonder if the Republic said, tried to do a motion to send, what do they call it in Phantom Menace, like to send like a convoy to see if there's validity to
Oh, a
Padme's
committee.
claims.
A
Yes,
committee.
I did not come to solve this at a committee. Do you
My
think there were any
God.
other people from Jeddah like we did not come here to like agree for some commission to be appointed to this? Yeah, I wonder if that's kind of what ended up happening.
Oh,
Um, Something along those
got
lines.
investigated by the ATF, is what they did.
and so what happens here is they Sav basically goes off on her own to try to free Maz. She waits until night when the enforcer droids are on
Yeah.
patrol.
Parole. It's been a long week, man. It's
What the
okay.
hell is going
We'll get
on?
there. We'll get there.
Just wait for the live stream tonight. I'm telling what might happen tonight with the live stream. If I can't speak in sentences, this is gonna be an interesting time.
I love it.
I'm gonna say something about like Gela Natai showing up in the Bad Batch, and I'm like, sorry, I meant Ventress. I don't
Don't
know
cross
where
the
that
streams,
happened.
buddy. Don't cross the streams.
Oh man, this episode is wonky already. This is gonna be fun for
It'll
whoever's
be all
listening
right.
out there. Anyway, but so Sav decides she's gonna go while the enforcer trades are on patrol, and she's gonna infiltrate the castle. And of course, she gets caught. She sees the leader of the Dengrex holding her lightsaber because she broke her lightsaber, in half. Part of it was with Quiet Shan, the other part was with Roth, the old and
Right.
the guy who was like the marshal trying to arrest all the pirates. He
Yeah.
trusted him with, or she trusted him with part of her lightsaber as well. And she's like, crap, this is over. And she feels like a total failure. She's like, I failed as a Padawan. Like, I'm no Jedi. And now I'm failing as a pirate. I can't even, I got the queen of the pirates captured and the castle is lost. And she basically just takes on the burden of everything going on and puts it all on her shoulders. But I thought that was interesting because she's ignoring the lesson that Dexter Jetster gave her earlier. And that was a really sweet moment, which was Dex coming up to her and be like, powerful people have a way of putting more on themselves than what is necessary. You're doing a good job. And like gives her a big hug. And it's like this sweet moment. I'm like, that's the old buddy that we know right there. What'd you think about like Dex's little hug and her moment? And then like how the lesson that she gave him that she doesn't quite realize at the time whenever she's captured.
No, he had a solid point. Especially considering how old he obviously is. He's wise beyond his years. And okay, my phone is going nuts. I'm sorry, guys. And I know it's just gonna be a wild episode this week. But yeah, no, it was a nice little moment between the two of them. It kind of mirrored a little bit, from when they first met in the first issue, and whatnot. But he's telling her basically, you can't take on the whole world by yourself. You can't do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, she doesn't really grasp that lesson until she tries to run off and do it on her own, and that's when she realizes, that Dex's words had some wisdom to him. But yeah, no, it was a nice little moment between the two of them.
Don't you think that like Sav and Anakin, if they were training
Oh my
together,
God.
like how much fun, like how big best of
Yeah.
friends do you think they would be?
Oh my
Like
God,
like
yeah.
Anakin was 100% would sneak out of the temple to go hang out with the pirates and go on like these missions if he was stationed on Takodana or something. Like 100%.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
every time she's doing that, she's like, there's sometimes just when their behaviors, I'm like, this is it feels like Anakin vibes, right
It
now.
does. It
And
really does.
and so she gets captured and gets thrown in a cell with none other than the marshal that she gave her lightsaber to before, name's Roth. And she's like, I failed. It's all over. We're doomed. And then, what's the name of that creature that has been in the castle, like the giant pig-like creature or whatever? Do you
It
remember
was
the
like
name?
in the
It's the
ventilation.
one thing that always escapes my mind is the name of the creature.
I'll
Yes.
just look it up.
Okay. So while you're looking it up, so the
Oh yeah.
creature the
Opening
creature,
my bag and board.
Ruff hid Sav's lightsaber, everyone. Hid the lightsaber in like the belly of the creature, had the creature swallow it, keep it in under her tongue, in her belly, whatever, and then spits out the
Yeah.
lightsaber once, she sees Sav, and he was just like, yeah,
Wrong
thought
issue.
that would be a pretty good idea when they were coming to inspect me. I was like, oh, I guess I'll just hide this bad boy here. And sure enough, he has this like revelation right now. He's a honest working man of the law, law enforcement trying to get these pirates under control. And in that moment, he looks at Sav. He's like, you showed me that you have the true heart of a Jedi. And she's like, I did? What? Like, who? Me? And he says how you showed me faith that no one else had shown me, even though I was trying to arrest you, and all I've done is, lash out. You got the name.
Tantique.
Tantique.
And I'm pretty
Tantique.
sure it's a Corellian hound.
A Corellian hound, Tantique. Yes, very good.
Yeah.
We love our Corellian hounds here on Star Wars Newsnet, the Timeline Show. And Tantique had the lightsaber, spits it out. Go look up Tantique. I'm sure she's got a whole article on Wikipedia someday. Maybe we can do a whole episode just centered around the adventures of Tantique whenever the Tantique miniseries arrives to on our doorsteps eventually. And so, like I said, Roth has had this revelation that you showed me loyalty no one else has. These pirates have shown me loyalty and faith that no one else in my life has. So I have decided to abandon my role as the worst job in the world, being a marshal, to track down these pirates and become a pirate. And Seb's like, really? You're becoming a pirate? And he goes, and this line made me laugh. He goes, it's the only honorable thing to do.
That's
really.
Right.
It's like, it felt like so Pirates of the Caribbean when you got like Will and Elizabeth Swan, like they're like becoming pirates themselves, and it's because the pirates are now end up turning into the morally good characters in the second and third films. Like those are the ones that you are cheering for, the ones you want to follow, and they're suddenly the good guys. It's like, yep, the pirates have now become these are the good guys. It's the honorable thing to do, to become a pirate and repay the debt. What did you think about that little
No,
thing?
it was a nice little change, especially considering how serious he was, and with his job in the first couple of issues. And yeah, it's just it honestly, with everything that kind of has happened with him throughout these 8 issues, it kind of makes sense, from what he saw, what he witnessed, what he experienced, that he would kind of flip that switch and just be like, you know what, screw it, let's just do it, like. And so, but he's doing it for, and I can't think of Amac. He's doing it for Amac.
Yeah, I think it's Alec.
Alec. You're right. Alec. You're right.
Yes, Alec. He's doing it for Alec. He wants to just be with Alec. He's like, that's what I want to do. I'm just gonna, open up myself to kind of what probably he's always secretly wanted, but just felt bad about being a pirate. Can't blame him. A life on the run from the law is not for everyone. And so once Sav, she has her lightsaber, that she breaks him out of the cell, and they basically begin to try to take the castle back. She calms, the other pirates, saying, get a diversion, let's go attack now. And the Dengrax are like, send out all of the enforcer droids, send them all out, wipe them out. All of them. And so she sends them out. The leader of the Dengrax, like Akric, sends him out. And that's when Sav makes her presence known. And she begins to duel with the leader of the Dengrax. And I was like kind of thinking this guy would be just a pushover for Sav, like kind of like really weak. But then all of a sudden she talks about how this guy is fighting with rage. He's also a Geonosian, so he's got his wings, and so he's literally just flying around swinging a lightsaber. And it reminded me of just some like like crazy level of like Lego Star Wars or something like nonsense
Yeah.
that would happen on Lego Star
Yeah.
Wars where there's just chaos around. You're like, what is going on?
A force sensitive Geonosian with a lightsaber fighting a Jedi Padawan. Yeah. Wild.
It was like someone totally created some sort of fan fiction of this at some point and then did that, because a Geonosian with a lightsaber is actually kind of a scary thought now when I think about it, when they're flying around like that. And so they're doing that and they're fighting, and then there is a diversion created, and the pirates decide to charge, and all the pirates are chanting something different. Some of them are like, for Maz, for Takadana, for pirate freedom, whatever they're chanting. But this one stood out to me as the best one of all. I think you know the citation officer who has been in Mormont's little
subsection 7B08-08
he said
Article 5 or something.
The citation officer chants for violation of subheading 73-88 paragraph 4. And you know he charges. And that to me, it felt like something like Niebuhr Gascon would chant when he's going into battle, like on top of his D squad. Like I feel like that's just straight out of a Clone Wars thing. What did you think? You had to have laughed at that one, right?
No, I did laugh at that. But the reason they charge those because they look across the lake and you don't see it at first. They don't reveal it until a couple pages later.
Right.
But they see something coming across the lake, and that's when they turn around and say, "We're not retreating, charge, let's go!" And that's why they turn around and head back for the castle.
And the thing, and what's going on there is the Jedi have decided to come to the aid of the pirates after all, and to intervene. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, like never thought I'd see the day." And they charge, and it's like the pirates and Jedi team up. And then on the inside, you finally have Sav, who takes down the member of the Dengrex. But it's really impressive. She almost kind of accepts, you know, who she is at that point. She's like, I am a Jedi, but I can also be a pirate. Like I don't have to choose.
It's that moment everything clicks into place. And like I said, these two issues have some awesome character development for her. But yeah, it's that moment because she has the realization that that this Dank Grak is fighting with rage and fire, and she's like, so that means I must be water. And she has that kind of wisdom to recognize that, to see that, and she, I mean, just takes him over like that, like ain't nothing.
And the spread for those pages when they're fighting and she's realizing that are really, really good. Cool. Like it's really good. The High Republic Adventures comics visually, like I like so much more than the Marvel runs for Phase 2, like visually. Not saying the Marvel runs are bad or by any stretch, but I just kind of like the style of some of the way they did Jeddah and then this Battle of Takadana. And then Sav, you know, after she disarms him and she's got it figured out, they look over and there's the Jedi. There they are. And she's like, what? Like, you're here? And her master is here? And she goes, you came? And he's like, yeah, I've been messing up. Like, I've lost sight of that we should help people, and despite who they are, basically. But then the leader of the Denkgrax looks and he sees one of his own, like, standing there. He's like, I forget, it's like, Arklov, like, what are you doing with the Jedi? Like, we should be attacking, like, fight. And that's when you hear the voice, you know, speaks up from there. It's like, oh, Arkalov's right where I, you know, last left him. He's up in some asylum that I put him in. And that's when Sav's like, Tara Sanube? And apparently Tara Sanube has been undercover with the Denkgrax for a while now. And that's when Sav has the great line of like, I told you tasted bland, because she had told the Denkgrax that she had murdered Tara Sanube and
he's standing
him
right there. No, it was a great moment.
So good. What did you think of the big reveal and then what happens in a moment?
We were talking about this before we started recording. Yeah, the first time I ever read that, my jaw dropped, and it was like, holy crap, that's actually Tara Sanube. And I was like, that's such a cool callback, you know, to Clone Wars and to the, you know, the time period that we know. But at the same time, I'm like, I should have seen that coming. They talked about Tara Sanube so much, and, you know, earlier in this run, I was like, man, I should have seen that coming. But it was really a really cool moment, and I was gonna see what you thought about it because I knew it was coming, and I there was an earlier episode of the Timeline Show where I kind of alluded to it a little bit, what was going on with that character, and so I was going to see what you thought of it.
I thought Sanube would show up. I thought it would just be like he's someone that helps in the temple, like helps them end up freeing like Maz, and then ultimately teaches Sav like the lesson about becoming who you need to be, or and like being okay with, you can be a Jedi and have these little adventures at the same time. Like it's
Yeah.
okay. Like each Jedi is different. I thought that would be Tara Sanube's role. I did not think he would be the undercover pirate or
Full
clan
body paint,
guy
like,
with full
yeah.
body paint. And that, was the one that Sav told, I actually ate you and killed you a while back. And I thought that was funny. And then we find out that Sav's master, Karklov, he is taking a leave of absence because this latest kind of act of just trying to enclose the Jedi and not help the people that were in need.
Right.
He decides he needs some time apart and doesn't want to take on an apprentice during this time. And so Sav gets the wish that she's always wanted. Her new master is none other than Tara Sanube,
Yep.
and she could not be more thrilled about that. How did you like how that turned out for Sav?
It was a nice turn of events for her, especially with everything that had gone on, and you could tell how downtrodden she was toward the beginning of the series. Talking about how her master didn't understand her, and and all this. But I thought it was a little premature for her to scream "Yay!" when her old master is literally walking out the door.
Master's standing right there. She's like, finally, he's gone. That was funny. I will also point out that I did think that it was a little bit rushed the way that they ushered him out. Like they didn't even like really mention much.
He literally just said, "I'm done," and then walked out the door.
Yeah, there was no
was
like
it,
when I say that he's feeling that certain way because of how he handled this, that's like purely conjecture and trying to read between the lines of what it's saying, because it does not say at all like what's on his mind. He's just like, I feel like I've lost my way. I must leave. And then it's okay, well, I need a new master. Tara Smith, I got you, girl. He's like, it was hilarious. It's literally in all caps, yes, and her all, I imagine
literally
her master
jumping,
was
like,
that's why I left. That's why I left right there. And so there's the nice little image of all the pirates and even and her just hanging out and with Dex. They're all hanging out in Maz's castle. Dex is there. The whole crew's there. Maz is there. Sav's there. And what'd you think? Just it wrapped a nice little bow around it all. It was just nice, happy vibes going into it, which is the exact opposite of what we're about to talk about.
Oh my God. Yeah.
We're
about to have whiplash from Tone here. No, it was a nice wrap up for this run. For all 8 of these issues, it, like you said, it put a nice bow on the whole story, and basically everybody ended up back where they started, but maybe in a little bit of a better place for Sav, and so I thought it was a great finish for the run.
Yes, I agree. I actually enjoyed the way it wrapped up a little bit more than I liked the way the Marvel ones wrapped up a little bit, but it was really good. So, shall we get into the main event, so to speak?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, I talked about this before. This is my favorite Star Wars book of all time. Right now, this is how I feel about it right now. And so you want to put that thumbnail up there for those watching on YouTube.
Gotcha.
So, Cataclysm is the book. The author is the renowned, glorious, great Lydia Kang, and this is High Republic Phase 2, the year 382 BBY. This book came out April 4th, right before my birthday. It was like this beautiful early birthday present that it came out. I read it, of course, a little bit before because I wrote the review on Star Wars Newsnet. You can check that out after the timeline show if you're interested. I kind of dive into, it's kind of a non-spoilery review, so you won't get into like all the hard-hitting stuff because I put the review out in April when it came out. Yes. So if you want just like a little bit more of my thoughts on the way the story runs, you can check it out there. But I have to say that I hope someday I'm able to talk to or meet Lydia Kang in some way, just to express to her how amazing this book is, because this book really is my favorite Star Wars book, because I think it hits on everything that Convergence did a great job of, and amplifies it.
It's a great sequel book to it.
It amplifies it. It's like The Empire Strikes Back to Convergence's A New Hope.
Absolutely. And there's so much going on in this book too. There's so many different story threads happening at the same time. But and normally when you have so many plots going in a book, it's hard to kind of keep track of all of it. This one's not like that. For some reason, like you can just pick right up on the next chapter of, a storyline you read 5 chapters ago and just keep right on going with it. And it just flows together so perfectly. So this is a jam-packed book. There's
about 8 different
lot in it. Yeah.
There's about 8 different storylines going on.
Yeah.
You have several different groups of Jedi. You have the 2 counselor storylines. You have Fontu and Ziri. And this book just kind of is percolating throughout this whole book is that promise and hope for a better tomorrow. Like, we are going to fight for this better tomorrow, but it doesn't have any of the naivety that that's going to be easy, or that this is going to be like a walk in the park. Like, going into this book, as you're reading, there's going to be sacrifices made here. But at no point throughout this book do you feel like those sacrifices are going to be in vain or anything like that.
Right.
When you read, and this is partly due to the era, but at the same time, when you read a prequel book, you know that, like, as good of the stories as to me, it's almost a little like there's a little melancholy when it comes to reading it, because you know how it all turns out, and we don't know how all of this is going to turn out. But I just like this fly that keeps firing, going around my freaking microphone. It's driving me insane. Anyway,
part of the show.
I know. Maybe he has something to say about Cataclysm. But like I said, when you're reading through this, you have no doubts that there's going to be some pain. Like, there is the main event of this book is called the Night of Sorrow. And through that Night of Sorrow, we have some of the greatest feats that the Jedi Order has probably ever done within this one, fight, this one battle. And there's so many like great lines from this book that are honestly what Star Wars is all about, which is about that fight for a better tomorrow, that hope, the fact that we're not going to give up in the face of evil, in the face of darkness. We're going to keep pushing through. And that's the Star Wars that I want to read. Like, that's the Star Wars I really enjoy. And there's like romantic elements interlaced through all of this. There is pure evil that is interlaced through all of this. And the way that the storylines weave together, it takes a really great mind and a really great author to be able to take on this number of threads and then interweave it in a way that it makes sense, and that you don't get lost along the way. Like you mentioned earlier, you read about this one character and then you go 5 chapters without talking to them, and then when it brings it back, it makes perfect sense along the way. So I'm going to read through, we're going to talk about this book, but I'm going to read through some of the just different character pairs, because it's kind of like pairs up for this. Okay.
Bunch of
I want you to tell me which one, like which pair, like do you that stood out the most to you, that you enjoyed reading the most. Okay. So we have Charlie Roy and Enya Keen.
Mm-hmm.
We have Creighton's son and Ada Forte. Mm-hmm. Yaddle and the youngling Kippa.
Love that one.
You have Bino and Axel, who are teamed up for a while, until Gela and Axel end up being teamed up, for the last little bit of the book. You have Gela Natai and Oren Darga as a new Jedi that we're introduced to. Okay. You have Fontu and Ziri, of course.
Love that one, yes.
And then you have like the 2 chancellors who are operating on different, parts of the galaxy, but their storylines kind of interweave because they're communicating throughout the book. So that's like 8, 9 different character pairs.
It's a lot, yeah.
So which one do you think, like, you read this book and you're like, those 2 character stories, like that was for me?
Oh, it was easily Yaddle. It was Yaddle and Sippa. Is it Sippa or Chippa?
I don't know. I said Kippa, and then I would say Sippa sometimes. So I don't know. Like, it's one of those things in Star Wars where we're going to be talking about this. We're going to mispronounce this name, and then we're going to hear Lydia Kang say in an
audio book.
In an audio book. And then we're like, crap, we just spent an hour talking about this character the wrong way.
Hey, Han. It's actually Han, but that's okay. Yeah. No, I love Yaddle, and I'm going to say Sippa. That anytime those 2 were interacting in the book, I was smiling, and it's all because of Sippa. Like, she is so like.
Am I allowed to say Kippa?
Hilarious. Kippa? Can we say Kippa? Is it Kippa?
No, like you can say Sippa. Am I allowed to say Kippa? That's how I read it.
Fine.
Like,
that's
we can
fine.
read it. Yeah. It's like fine. I didn't know. Like, are we okay with a little lack of uniformity today?
That's fine. Leia. Yeah, it's fine. It doesn't matter.
Anyway, continue.
But no, I absolutely loved that pair, especially, we'll talk about here in a little bit. There's one really great moment. There's several great moments, but there's one in particular that really stood out to me with those 2. And their relationship speaks volumes to Yaddle's patience. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, when we get into the meat and potatoes of it. But we're starting to see more and more Yaddle stuff, and I love it. I love Yaddle. And I want to see even more. So when she popped up in this, I was like, yes,
it was
so
great. It was great. It's not a Yaddle story.
No, not by any means.
Yaddle and Sippa are Yaddle and Kipper are like two of the best parts of this book.
I
Like
love
two of the
them.
best parts of this
Love
book.
them.
So let's here I'm going to set the stage of what's going on right now based off of where we left off in the last show, and then we're going to go through these character pairs and just kind of set the stage of like where these characters are at, where they're going, and what they're doing along the way. Because we can honestly talk about most of them separately for a while, and then bring it all together because it all comes together at the end because all roads lead to Dawn
for
and
the
the
last
home.
act.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, the Battle of Jeddah, is concluded pretty much by this point, and the war between Aram and Arano is about to reignite, and the path of the open hand has their fingerprints all over this. So the Jedi are kind of aware of this, but then it becomes even more abundantly clear later on in the book when Bino, who is working for the mother, and the mother sends him to kind of get captured on purpose, and he has this Clydobacter in his ship, which is this like bio weapon that can absolutely wipe out the planet of like Iram or whatever if they need
any
it.
oceanic.
Any oceanic planet. Yeah. And so the goal was with Jeddah having ended and the two sides are seemingly back in conflict. Well, this bioweapon being found like in Iram's space would just divide everything into chaos. And so he actually uses the word chaos. The mother uses the word chaos here. And Bino goes, so knowing that Axel's name, his nickname to her is Chaos, he's like, are you wanting me to free Axel then from prison as well? Because if you remember from Convergence, Axel is in prison. And she says, yes, he has a role yet to play. I'm not sure yet what that is, but we're going to need him. And so Bino's off doing that. And the two sides are in conflict. You have Charles Roy and his Padawan, Inyakeen. They are basically going to be charged with, eventually they're going to be going to Dalna as well, but they're going to be investigating some of these path of the open hand things that are going on. They were not at, the Battle of Jeddah, but they have been kind of tasked with some of this relief and support. And then you have Creighton's son and Ada Forte. You have Creighton and Ada. They were at the Battle of Jeddah. We talked about them last week. When it comes to this pair, what do you like most about this pair? Because these two are amazing to read together, like in tandem, because they have such a great friendship.
Right. No, they're a lot of fun. I really like Ada a lot. And Creighton, he just seems like so much like the traditional Jedi to me. Just what you would like, the cookie cutter image of a Jedi.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I like the two a lot. They're not I might catch some slack from you on this one. They're not by far my favorite part of this book.
Right. I mean, that's not a slight though, because there's so many great characters in the book.
It's just anytime it went back to them, I was like, okay, let's just get on back to the. I want more of Kippa and Yaddle. I want more of that. I want more Fantu and Ziri. So, but yeah, no,
I wasn't ever complaining about that, but they're definitely like when I read this book, I was like, give me all the Gela and Axel, give me all the Fantu Ziri, take me to Kippa. Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure because they do. But the Ada has some. So I wrote a couple of lines from the book down that have stuck with me that I want to read later. But they were on the Battle of Jeddah. Yeah. And the council and Chancellor Greylark have said, you need to go to Dalna. Like, we need to investigate the path. Like, this needs to happen. Right. And so they're going to go. They're on their way there. Ada is very optimistic. She's like the optimistic Jedi. She's the one that's like, we're going to fight for life until the day ends. We're going to not pretend, but we're going to almost look for it everywhere that we see it. And Creighton's just like, he's like the Eeyore of the group. He's just like, oh, this is gonna end horribly. We have failed. We suck, and
so pessimistic.
But I think it kind of speaks to how great their friendship is that he's willing to be open and honest about that, and she knows that even despite their two way different ways of them viewing the world, they're able to work so well together, which is really great. Then you have Gela Natai and Axel Greylark. Gela Natai and Oren Darga. Gela and Axel get together. Right. Oren Darga. Yeah. So I feel like you love Oren Darga.
I love Oren.
Is it because of the dad jokes?
Yes, that's exactly why. I love Oren so freaking much because he's got this like wicked sense of humor, and every time he would crack a joke, I'm I'm a dad. I have a 4-year-old son with with my wife, and then we have two um, preteens that we're in the process of adopting right now.
Yes.
And so I'm cracking dad jokes left and right. Like
Mhm.
it's just part of who I am. And
Right.
so yeah, all of his humor, I loved it. It was so delightful in this
So
book.
Lydia Kang, she describes this character perfectly, and this exact thing happened to me when reading it. Is Oren Darga says that he's like, I gotta grace his humor, and he's like, I'll wear you down though eventually.
Yeah, you'll get
And
tired of me.
like
Yeah.
Yella, I was kind of like that. I was like, who is this clown? Like, why are you cracking dad jokes all the time? And I'm like, you gotta be like, are you serious? Like, I'm reading this. I'm like, are
I
you
loved it.
serious? This is. But by the end of the book, he's cracking dad jokes, and I'm like, I love this guy. Like, I
Yeah.
love this guy. And
Yeah.
it's like, and then I had to stop and think and go, oh, exactly what he said. They said was gonna happen with this character did happen. I went from, oh yeah, this guy's this is ridiculous. I don't want
Yeah.
this all the time to just give me another dad joke. Like
Yeah.
just pop one right there.
Line.
Give it to me. Like right
Line.
there. Line. And then you have, of course, Yaddle and Kippa. So for those who don't
Yes.
know, Yaddle is basically looking after. Oh, sorry. And Yella and Oren, they're going to go after Axel to try to figure out
Yes.
more about
Yeah.
the path of the open hand. And so Yaddle and Kippa, Yaddle is looking after this little youngling who. Yaddle is how old at this point? Like 500 years old or whatever
Yeah,
at some
something
point.
like that. Yeah.
And Yaddle 400 years old, whatever, has her patience is running so thin with this young. She
I
loves this
know.
kid, but if you've ever had a kid that like you both love so much or been around for a while, but also was like, this kid is driving me insane. Like I
Yeah.
just have to pawn it
I want
off
to
on
butt kick him.
someone
Yeah.
else for a little bit. That's
Yeah.
basically what Kippa is. And it was hilarious when she leaves these guards at one point in
Yes,
charge of
that's the
her.
moment I love.
And her favorite thing is just floating people without their permission. She just uses the force to like just float them in the air, turn them around. Like
But
what
she
do you
doesn't know
think?
what she's doing is even wrong.
Right.
She's just like, what?
I'm just using the force. Like, don't you think this is fun?
Love it.
He's like, let's have fun. Oh, sorry, you're upside down. What are we gonna do about it? What was your favorite part about that dynamic?
So the when they land on Dalna and she leaves Kippa with the two guards, she tells I don't remember who was with her. Who are the other two Jedi that were with her?
She lands with She meets Creighton and
Was
Ada
it Creighton
there.
and yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Okay. And so she tells them we've only got like a half hour max, and they're like, what are you talking about? And she's like, trust me, let's go. And so like a half hour later, they're getting ready to go into this path of the open hand compound, and they turn around and here comes Kippa with the two guards, and they're just like, and so like one of them, I don't think we ever even found out what happened. Something
Basically
happened.
Kippa says something and the guard's like, we said we weren't gonna talk about it.
That's
We're
right.
not
Yeah,
gonna
the
talk
guard's
about
like,
it.
we're not talking about it. And so something happened with this little kid. These two like elitely trained guards just couldn't handle her anymore. And so they're just like, fine, let's go. Just take her back to Yaddle in the middle of this dangerous mission. And they're like, screw it, we're done.
It's so good.
Loved it.
Good. It's so
Loved it.
good.
But
then, of course,
and the fact that Yaddle knew it was going to happen too, because she sneaks off to get some disguises for him, and she just happens to bring back enough for everybody because she knew they were going to be coming.
Yes.
I loved it. I love
It's
that
so good. Like whenever she drops him off, she goes, "Oh, you have no idea how much I need this. Okay, we got 20 minutes. Let's go.
Let's go."
I think she says something like, "They're not gonna last long."
Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely adore those two. I love them.
And then we have Fontu and Ziri. Of
Yeah.
course, the star-crossed lovers play the Across the Stars theme. It's blaring throughout this novel. And there's something I loved about the last one. It really got into like they're forming this bond. This one is like the bond is formed. They do love each other, but they're dealing with the strains of having to leave warring planets or near warring planets while also trying to figure out how to see one another. Because both their parents are like, you need to stop talking to them right now because we're about to go to war with them. And their parents aren't exactly the most supportive of what's going on. They trust their child, but they're also, kind of like, you're being too naive about this relationship. And they're like, no, I trust, I believe in Fontu. I believe in Ziri.
And at the same time, also, they're both having to learn, instead of ruling separate planets, they're basically ruling one together now. You know what I mean? And so they're trying to come to terms with this, trying to get into the swing of things and trying to realize that they're not two separate peoples anymore. Now that they're together, they're heirs. They haven't figured out how to run it together yet.
And it's about less, what's best for Aram, what's best for Erno, what's
Right.
best for both of us
Both.
together, like
Right.
what's best for both planets. And that's definitely not easy after years
Yeah.
spent in conflict.
Right.
And so Bino, we'll go back to Bino. This is gonna take a while.
There's a
Eventually, we're
lot
all
here.
gonna
Yeah.
get so Bino is captured, and he's captured with this guy named Goy or whatever, and
GOI.
yes, GOI. And so they're captured. They discover the Clydobacter, basically, and Ziri and Fontu and Charlie Roy and Yakin, they're all aware of like something fishy is going on here. And eventually Goy gives it away that they're members of the Path of the Open Hand. Inya had been suspecting that they were keeping something, like they were suspecting that something was going on, but some of his comments eventually made it obvious. And that's when they confront them. And Goy and Bino like fire off like poison, at them. And Ziri gets affected with poison, and Goy's poison gets all over himself. He dies, and they're like, crap, we have to take these people alive. Like, we need to question them. But while Ziri is, down, we get Bino was pretending to be unconscious, and then he gets a knife, and it looks like he's about to just kill Ziri right there.
Yeah.
And Fontu just dives in front and saves her.
Ribs,
takes one and saves her. And the Jedi eventually are able to rally to send Bino away. But Bino was able to escape because he said that they had planted poison bombs basically all throughout the capital city of Arano. And if you take me in, if I don't get to my ship and say, disarm them, they're going to go off as soon as I, don't do that. And so they let him go, even though they don't know if he's bluffing or not, but they just feel like they have to let him go. And Fontu's in critical condition. And this is the first time we've seen them unable to speak to each other, and one of them, not being able to even lean on the other at all. And I thought that was a really interesting. What did you think about that part?
Yeah, no, it showed, they've been throughout this entire book, Fantu and Ziri have a lot of relationship problems, and they're still learning a lot about each other. And so this happening was kind of a clarifying moment for, at least for Ziri, kind of realizing what the two of them really had together. And she's really worried about him, but she decides to take those matters into her own hands and decides that, I'm going to have to be the one to represent both planets instead of just mine or the other. I have to represent both for the first time.
Right. And she decides to take, the Jedi, and they're going to go to Dalna to address the path directly. But she is taking no military presence with her. She's like, I want to try to resolve this. She's like, Fontu would want to resolve this completely peacefully. And so out of, almost respect for him too, but also respect for the idealism and the future they're trying to build. She says, we're going to go with no military. We're going to try to do this, as peacefully as possible. And I like how you mentioned like this relationship, problems that they've had, understandably so, given what they've had to endure. But also in that moment, it's like when you go through these like hard times, even with your significant other or, one of them, I almost look at it as some, I'm sure you've experienced this before. Like if, let's say your wife or your significant other is somewhere else and you're around someone else and they start maybe like speaking ill of that person or saying something, and you just get so riled up and frustrated. You got to put that person in their place, and then later on you're like, okay, yeah, I know I'm with the right person. I'm getting this fired up. It's not even me you're talking about, and so like I think when that moment when she sees Fontu and she's enraged at Fontu, but she's also so worried. She's like, okay, like we're going to be okay. Like no matter what, we're going to be okay, because she realizes how much they have. And he didn't even hesitate before jumping, and taking that knife for her, even though they've been at odds for much of the last several sections of the book.
Right.
So while that's going on, Oren and Gela are making their way to the prison where Axel is being held. And they are talking with Axel, who, if we recall from the Queen's Bloom, Axel has an ability to make himself appear really, really sick on command.
Yes,
he's able to do this. And so they go to the prison, and Axel is super sick. And he's saying that it's like the atmosphere here is not good for him. And he's sick, and he's trying to get transferred to a nice, restful easier place, low security with a lesser sentence. And Gela has been dealing with the weight of what happened between them, but also
His
what
betrayal,
happened, on the previous, in the previous book, Convergence. And Oren's this whole time been trying to tell her, like, it's not your fault. It was like, it's almost like the scene from Good Will Hunting. It's not your fault.
Yeah.
Like, it's not your fault. And she, is having a hard time wrestling with that. She needs closure with Axel for her to move on. And I think she reconciles that with the Force as well. Like, the Force is saying you need this closure too before you can move on. And she's like, fine, I guess I'll go talk to him.
Well, you're talking about her reconciliation with the Force too. She's also at this point already petitioned the Jedi Council to be a Wayseeker.
Yes.
And so, we've talked about Wayseekers before. And it's basically somebody who, for those of you who haven't seen it before, it's somebody who is no longer kind of working for the Jedi Order or as part of the Jedi Order, but is still like a Jedi. They're still, helping people, but they're going where the Force is calling them instead of where the Jedi Order is kind of sending them.
And we always make the comparison to Qui-Gon. Like, I think we did that in previous shows, like, because it's a lot easier for people. It's like, Vernestra Rwoh was a Wayseeker for a time, and you're like, who's Vernestra Rwoh? Most people are like, who's Vernestra Rwoh? But if you tell them, well, Qui-Gon, he would probably be a Wayseeker because he is, so focused on where the Force is calling him.
Right.
And so that's kind of, whenever you think Wayseeker, think, okay, Qui-Gon would have done that. And so Vantu and Ziri, they meet, and Axel's not exactly being super cooperative. He gives them a little bit, but not a lot. And ultimately, he's thinking about getting transferred. He's really sick. Some pirates storm the facility, and so they think pirates. But then they realize, oh my goodness, these are Path of the Open Hand members. And Axel has a choice to make. He can either go with the Path of the Open Hand and Bino, who is breaking him out, or he can stay with Gela and Oren and do the right thing.
Right.
All bear in mind, he has Gela's lightsaber in his hand because she had tossed it to him so he could defend himself while this battle is going on.
Very important later on.
And of course, and as he always does, Axel makes the wrong decision when faced with his opportunity. And like always, I'm instantly ready to forgive him and give him another chance as soon as he makes this decision. And he doesn't even have the decency to toss Gela's lightsaber back to her.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, no, I'll keep this, a little memento to help me remember you by. And I'll see you later. Sorry again. And he's actually sorry, but he's just in so deep that he just feels like his only way out is to go with the path. And what did you think about Axel yet again, Brian? Letting us down.
Shocked. Part of me was like, maybe, and then the other part of me overrid that before we even got to him making the decision. I'm like, he ain't gonna do it. He's not. He's 100%. Going. Yeah, and so when he decided to dip, and and in the book it looked like it took a little bit of convincing on the path's part to try to get him to come with them. But yeah, I was more worried about him taking one of her lightsabers with him. And I was like, because as a Jedi, like that would really, piss me off. Like to take one of my lightsabers.
You did what now? And Gela has like these two purplish, pinkish lightsabers. They're awesome. They're really cool.
They're identical. They're awesome. But like to have that connection with your kyber crystal. And just to have somebody just up and just, especially somebody who's betrayed you in the past, you tried to trust them again. They
someone like Axel
again,
takes it.
Yeah, and you're like, son of a, like, are you serious?
And so what's interesting though is Gela's lightsabers have this interesting connection where when they're apart, she can almost sense where the other one is when it's nearby. So as they're tracking down Axel, she knows where he is because she knows where her lightsaber is. So that makes it interesting. So let's go ahead. We're not going to fast forward too much, but let's get close to where we're all at Donna. So I'm going to give like a quick synopsis of what happens so we can get to the main,
get everybody in the same parts of the board. Yeah.
So here's what's going down. We have Charlie, Roy, and Enya. They're going, with Ziri to the planet Dalna. They're going with them to do these peace negotiations with the Path of the Open Hand, where they discover that Fontu has stowed away on board in his little med capsule because he refuses to be left behind. And even though he can barely walk around or do anything right now. He's recovering, but he's not ready to like face any action. But they go to Dalna and they're going to try to meet with some of the elders of the path in order to figure out, hey, can you stop trying to cause our planets to, wipe each other out? You have Creighton, Ada, Yaddle, and Alkippa who are going through Dalna like undercover in
Through the
disguise
compound, yeah.
and through the compound. And there's like a really good, I do want to touch on this moment because Yaddle is talking about finding the light and always seeking to help the light. And Kippa is handed a blaster from one of the path like leaders because it's very clear as they're walking through the compound, they're gearing up for war. They are moving elders and children like to the top as like they're moving them as away, and they're distributing blasters to everyone. There's cannons, to stop aerial assault here. They're discovering, eventually they're gonna discover these enforcer droids, and they're like, oh my gosh, like they're like legit ready for like a full scale assault of some kind. And Kippa, who is just a youngling, is handed this weapon, and the person that hands her is like, you're never too young to start serving the path. And it's like, wow, these people have reached a whole new level of extremities of extreme because they're arming their children and their elderly to basically go die for the mother or go die for the path. And Kippa, uses the Force when they leave to destroy that blaster because she doesn't want any child to be forced to use it. But what did you think about like that moment? Because it was the first time we saw like through a child's eyes, like what this is like. She's horrified by some of this, but she doesn't know what to make of it right now either because it's not like the battle has started yet.
Well, she's a little off as it is anyway. She's really not like other children, you know what I mean? And so
super in tune with the Force.
Yes, and very naive, which is weird to have naivety with like you said, being in tune with the Force like that. But yeah, no, to see it from that point of view was it was terroristic, know, and so you really start to see what's interesting about phase 2 with the Path of the Open Hand is as you go through it, and a lot like, a lot with the Mother too, you start to see the layers get peeled back more and more and more and more and more. And then we're getting to that point, we're coming up to 0 hour, with phase 2, where we're about to the core. You're about to see them for what they really, really are. And to see that from Kippa's point of view, I thought that was really interesting to show it, to kind of reveal, not even really reveal it, but to finally physically see it for the first time through her eyes rather than somebody else's. I thought it was a cool choice. And it made me feel bad for Kippa. It just
she thinks she's on her way to the temple to start her life as a Jedi, and she's so excited. And instead, what she's thrust into first is war and death and sorrow and encounters with the nameless that the full-grown Jedi aren't prepared to deal with, and she's having to deal with that. And so the Jedi get their first, these Jedi, Creighton and Ada, they get their first dose of the nameless here. They don't meet it head on, but they sense it, and they see the results of it on another Force-sensitive prisoner that the Path have. And they see that, oh my goodness, this guy's turned to dust. He's a husk, and whatever we felt, we can't control it. And so while that's going on, Axel is now reunited with the Mother. And the Mother is basically saying that I need you to record a message to your mother telling her to come here as the Chancellor of the Path to meet with us. And you will be safe as long as she meets with us to do this and create some law and starts acting in the interests of the Path of the Open Hand. Basically, they want, to blackmail the Chancellor with Axel's life. And Axel's like, I will. My mom's not going to do, she's not going to do anything for me. She's going to cut me and run. She's the Chancellor. She's not going to do that. And the Mother's like, no, that's what you're going to do. And so he decides to go ahead and record the message. And at that time is when Gela and Oren, basically, they arrive onto the scene. And she is trying to get him to not send that message. She's like, don't send the message. You can still, do this. And that's when he goes, send. And
basically.
And this moment kind of kicks off the Night of Sorrow in many ways right here.
And what's interesting real quick too, I just want to throw in real quick, is none of these groups know that the other groups are there. Yes, I should have mentioned that. That's everybody is converging on this compound from different angles and have no, Yaddle and Kippa and all of them have no idea that Gela and Orin are there, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and like just everybody's just kind of showing up all at the exact same time. So it almost seemed very fated that they were all
Mm-hmm.
supposed to kind of converge at the same time. I just wanted to throw that in there real
Because
quick
there's
also.
multiple times where then they start realizing how many Jedi are here. Like there's
Yeah.
tons
They
of us
keep
here.
stumbling across each other and like, wait, what the heck?
But and
Like,
at the
yeah.
same time, too, with each new Jedi, the path encounters are like, oh, now we're under assault by the Jedi. It's just this
Right.
and so they're like, we're gonna double up the ante here. And
Right.
so Gela, you know, she is trying to get him to not send the message. He sends the message anyway. And what happens here is you see Bino and Axel, and Axel even and this first sad moment really happens in the book that
Yeah.
really breaks your heart. Oren gets a full face full of poison and is dying in front of Gela's eyes and pretty much dies in her arms. And his
Yeah.
last words were, "Remember me when you remember how to laugh again."
Yeah.
And that got me. Like that one just got me because I
That's
was not prepared for him. I thought that he would probably bite the dust because he's a new Jedi. He's a little bit of an older Jedi as we're entering this, but so suddenly like that, like
yeah.
there was still 150,
And
pages left
brutally
in the
too.
book, and
Yeah.
he gets poisoned to death by these other path members. And his last line was very fitting for him. He just
Yeah.
says, "Remember me when you remember how to laugh again." You know.
And that's what I get for getting attached to another Jedi. Like as soon as like anytime I get attached to it, I saw I'm done. Like I'm done getting attached to people.
Oh
Um
man.
every single time I find a new favorite Jedi, it's like, just kidding.
And so Geller gets put in prison. Of course, she gets put in prison,
Right.
and Bino has both of her lightsabers now. And so something kind of remarkable happens. This was my favorite twist of the book. This is my
Okay.
favorite twist of the book. Is when Chancellor Greylark gets the message from Axel,
Yes.
and she sends a recording back to the mother, and she agrees to come to Dalna and speak with the mother and speak with the path and to try to help Axel. And as you're reading that, you're like, all right, well, she's going to come. She's going to do her duties. And then she says, but not as Chancellor Greylark. I am hereby
Yes.
renouncing and rescinding my title as Chancellor. I will know, and I am not coming with any sort of power or
Or
prestige.
authority.
She
Yeah.
says, I am solely coming on behalf of my son. I am solely coming to, for on my son's behalf and
Yeah.
to protect my boy. And this was her way of like, hey, I know that our relationship has been strained. I know it's been tough over the last several years, but I love you. I care for you. And this is like a completely selfless act that I'm doing, for you. And the mother just loses it.
Loses
Like,
it.
this is where you saw the whole veil of like serenity, like this facade of serenity and calm and in control. It was gone, and you just
Breaks.
got
Yeah.
pure rage from the mother. She just absolutely she's like, I'm done with this guy. Like, get him out of here. Like, Axel is dead to me. And Bino's like, she's like, this is wild right now. Like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. And so what did you think when we got that moment from
I
Chancellor
I
Greylark?
loved that twist, and it's such a thing a mother in power would do too. Especially because one of the things about Kyong, how do you say
Keong,
her
yeah, I
name?
think it's
Kyong.
Keong.
One of the things about her throughout this entire book is she's struggled throughout it with Axel and the way she wants to treat Axel and behave towards him because of what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
She gets a message toward the beginning of the book about they're wanting to transport Axel to another place, lower security, and she's like, no, let him pay for what he did, and so she has that mentality. He needs to pay for what he's done. I can't just give him special treatment because he's my son.
Right.
I can't do that. That's not fair. So to see her finally realize what Axel needs to kind of get back on that right path, and she renounces that chancellorship. I did not see that. I was like,
I
as I
didn't
was
either.
reading it, I was hoping to God she would just say, I'm not coming. Like, no, just I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be beholden to
And that's
what
what
you
I
want me to
thought was
do.
going to
And
happen.
that's what I thought. And then when she says, but I'm renouncing my chancellorship and coming as Axel's mother, it's like, what? And
Yes.
I basically said what the same time the mother did. It was like, what?
It's so good because ever since his father died, everything's been
Yeah.
so much more challenging for them, understandably so. And she's had to wrestle with being his mother and being the chancellor of
Yeah.
the Republic. And she's realized in this moment, I can't do both. Like I can't do both. I need to choose one or the other. And I just loved it, and in very Star Warsy fashion, she chooses family. Like she chooses not what's necessarily best for the galactic good, even like because she could have, as Chancellor, been like, I'm going to keep Chancellor. We're going to take care of this and be done. Instead, she's like, no, I'm going to give that up because I'm biased right now. And I'm going to just focus on being a mother and protect my family. And this is when you knew it was about to go down because Yoda is with her when she sends the return. And Yoda's like, come with you to Dalna, I will. Like matters to settle we have. And that's like whenever Yoda shows up in some of the like the end of some of these books, because he's not a big player in the High Republic. They do a really good job of letting you feel his presence, but not like him being there. I think of like the Light of the Jedi. There's a moment where he shows up in Midnight Horizon. He has a moment, and here it's like this is like Yoda's like it's about to go down moment, and that's when you know like oh boy, like things are about to get cooking here. And so you have Jedi on all fronts fighting this battle, and Nameless I think they said there's dozens of them. There's tons of them just running around, just husking Jedi or killing others as they please. And there's a lot of Jedi because Republic reinforcements have arrived. There's there's like temple guards here, and Yaddle says, like, I think Yaddle has a line where she says, like, literally everyone is fighting: women, children, elderly, the infirm, the afflicted, like every single. It's not like your typical, almost like medieval, like the men are going to war. Like none of that. It's just full-fledged warfare here, and it's brutal. It's like Battlefront warfare, where it's just chaos all around, and the Jedi are just fighting back to back, trying to survive. And there was a few moments that I just want to go through on this battle with you. I want to get you like your reactions. So one of them was when two of the path, they stun Kippa and they shoot her, and she goes unconscious, and Yaddle just unleashes on them, like force grab, launch into a tree. Like she's like, I will show you what you get when you harm a child kind of behavior. What you think about that one? Especially as a parent, because it was like Yaddle kicked into like parent
very
mode there.
parental. Yeah, it was very, very parental. And I loved it. Like I said earlier, I love Yaddle. I'm so glad we're getting more Yaddle stuff. I loved her in Tales of the Jedi. I can't wait to read, the Living Force with her, and so I love Yaddle so much. And to see her, it's easy to do. I don't think she is, but it's easy to put her on the same kind of pedestal as Yoda, and it's very easy to do. But yeah, when she unleashed that was total parental. And what's cool is Kippa kind of comes too. If I remember right, no, she comes too later. Never mind. Kippa comes too much later.
So she comes too later. Yeah. Basically, Yaddle takes her back to the ship and says, you need to stay here, stay out of sight, and trust the Force. It doesn't take long, though, and Kippa's like, I'm going to go out. And she goes out, and basically her job is she wants to fight. She wants to fight. She sits behind those two guards that she got to know and love a little bit throughout this book. And her job is she sits behind them while they're fighting, and she just picks up people that are trying to shoot, and she just starts throwing people. She's her
just
job,
ragdolling people. Yeah,
she's like your job is like to sit and throw it. So she's just sitting back like, shoo, 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 like just throwing people all over the place. Like that's her job.
I love her.
That was perfect. And so you have that. And then Ada and Creighton are fighting, and they're kind of probably in the deepest trenches of all the Jedi. They've been there the longest. They're furthest into the compound.
They're way underground. Yeah.
They're fighting the droids. They're fighting the people of the Path of the Open Hand, or the Closed Fist. At this point, they changed their name to the Closed Fist because it's time for war. And it's become, there's Nameless coming around. So the Jedi are compromised, as is their connection to the Force is a little compromised because of the fact of the Nameless being so close in proximity.
Right.
And there's a great line where Creighton is sitting there like, we've lost. This fight's going horribly. Like we're losing, and it's over. And I wrote this one down as Ada says, we have not lost until there is nothing left worth saving. And that was just like probably the quintessential perfect Jedi line, like for the book. Like
and
that's what the Jedi
Padawan, are. Yeah, coming from a Padawan too. That's
so that was Ada. That was Ada. That was Ada.
Yes,
that was Ada. Yeah, not Inya. Not Inya. Sorry, I don't know if I actually said Inya. I didn't mean to.
I might have misheard you.
No, it's Ada to Creighton as they're fighting back to back.
Gotcha. Okay.
Inya has her moments because we could talk about them for a moment because her master and her are fighting in this conflict. And like we said, there's going to be losses along the way. And Charlie Roy was one of those losses. He got husked by the Nameless, and like, other Jedi happened to other Jedi as well. And so Charlie Roy dies, and Enya at this moment, it's not her coming of age, like I'm going to become a Jedi in this moment, because she's still a Padawan at the end of the book. But it's this moment where she, for the first time, experienced true loss and despair and didn't know what direction to turn, because she didn't have her master there to guide her. And it's just chaos all around her. And she had to truly trust in the Force in that moment. And ultimately, we saw a side of her we didn't see in Convergence. We saw a side of her we haven't seen yet in this book. And it was like this really incredible moment where she rises to the occasion and not only survives, but she thrives by leading others to safety during this book, which I really loved. And this is my favorite part of the book. All right. This is my favorite part of the book. The Axel stuff finally comes full thread. Are you ready for this? Is my favorite part.
Bring it.
Keon gets there. Axel is reunited with his mother. They free Gela. Gela's free, and they are all together now, and they're fighting, alongside one another. And Axel's like, just can't believe his mom is out here shooting droids and fighting people on the battlefield. And she's like telling him to get in line. She's like, what are you doing? Let's go, boy. Like, and he's like, yes, ma'am. Like, let's go. And so they're getting after it. And Keon gets shot eventually, and she has to get to the ship, and it's just Gela and Axel, and they have to trust each other in order to survive. But what happens is they get trapped in the river, and there's like an avalanche coming down. They're drowning. There's rocks and stuff everywhere. And we get what I feel like, if we ever got this in animation, this would be one of the greatest animation moments of all time. Because it's what everyone has always like dreamed of in their head when they, for like probably since Phantom Menace came out and we knew Yaddle was a thing, people have put like fan fiction and stuff together of Yaddle and Yoda doing something bonkers with the Force. Yeah. And what happens here is it looks like Gela or Axel or both might, bite the dust. And in the High Republic, no character has like plot armor that's safe. No one is safe besides like Yoda, Yaddle, and these characters that we know of in the prequels.
Right.
And you got to get your thoughts on this one.
Love it.
Yoda basically lifts, Yoda and Yaddle, basically one of them lifts all of the rocks and soil and everything out of the water and into the air. And Yoda, I think is Yoda, and basically the other lifts all of the water out of the river to separate the two. And they're holding basically an avalanche and a rushing river upended in the air. So Gela and Axel are able to get to safety.
Holy crap.
My jaw dropped, because the way Lydia Kang describes it is just so detailed and perfect and powerful. It was like I can almost feel the Force theme. I can hear it.
You
like,
could hear it. You can feel the rumble of the Force. Every time they use the Force in the movie, you hear the,
and then as soon as it happens, it's like,
you could feel the swell. It was an awesome moment. And like you said, Yoda hasn't really been prominent in the High Republic. He's there, but he's not, front and center all the time, which makes sense. I like that. I like that a lot. I don't want it to be a Yoda story. I want it to be a story of all these other Jedi, and it makes sense that he's there. I love that. But to give him the moment, because he hasn't had a big moment even in Phase 1 yet. Like, you know what I mean? He's been there.
I'd argue he has one in Phase 1.
Well,
Midnight Horizon.
Yeah.
The very end of Midnight Horizon.
You're not wrong. But
this one is, I think this one's better.
Trumps that. Yes. Yeah. And so to have him have that moment finally, especially with Yaddle, because like I keep saying, I love Yaddle. I love me some Yaddle. To see them work together like that in tandem, they don't even really communicate what they want to do. They just together do it. And it's like, it's so cool. It was such a cool part of the book.
Was one of those parts I read over again, like I don't always
make
do,
sure
like,
you didn't miss anything.
I'm just like, oh, that was so good. Like, let me just read that again. And I would love to like hear like Lydia Kang, like when she went into this book, was she thinking I'm gonna give Yoda and Yaddle like a team up like moment? Like that's just so cool. Like that's like the little kid in me that was watching, Yaddle, who didn't say any words, but she's just there, and then you see Yoda like, oh man, there's another one of Yoda's species like that exists. And you're always wondering like, what's Yaddle up to? Where'd she go? Like what? And you know that George Lucas hates Yaddle. And you're like, why? And then here they're like, you know what? We're gonna give Yaddle this super amazing moment with Yoda of all people. It was amazing. But we shift from that in the book. You know, there's we have this great moment, and then there's another moment that's pretty gut wrenching. Is when Ada falls victim. As well. She dies, and Creighton has to deal with the loss of his optimistic, friend, and the one he's been doing this all with. And it's really challenging moment for him because but what I love is that he believes so much in what Ada has been saying and preaching to him about optimism and trusting in the light and fighting for the light, that it doesn't launch him. It's very much Creighton feels like almost like, tell me if you disagree. He's like the Obi-Wan here of the prequels. Like a lot of bad stuff happens to him and he can almost be a little bit like negative and too much like, cynical. Like Obi-Wan all the time was kind of like, oh, that's not the right way to do things, or this isn't going to work.
Does not break.
But he is just absolutely unyielding in his principles. He's going to stay true to the book. He's always, you never have to worry about Creighton doing the wrong thing. Like he's not going to act in the way that he shouldn't. Just like Obi-Wan is, he's always going to do what's right in the end. And no one had more horrible things happen to them in their life than Obi-Wan did. So, that was a really tough one. You have Ada, Oren dying. You have Charlie Roy dying. It was brutal. And ultimately, you get Gela and Axel together, at the end in the book, and they finally come to this understanding. And something that I loved from their relationship, I wrote down this proverb from the Guardians of the Wills that Gela tells Axel in this book, because Axel is so frustrated with trying to uphold to certain standards and what's right and wrong. And Gela has moved beyond. She's more concerned with moving beyond like social constructs like disappointment and perfection. And she reads this proverb. I want to get your thoughts on like this force the most. She's like, this is something I cling to that helps me stay focused and centered. She says, in darkness, cold, in light, cold. The old sun brings no heat, but there is heat in breath and in life. In life, there is the force, and the force there is life, and the force is forever eternal. Like this we don't need to focus on this that. Focus on the force, focus on what's gonna matter, what's eternal in life, and focus on that. What are your thoughts on that one?
No, I liked it. It's freaking deep, and it's not hard to interpret, even for somebody like Axel Greylark. He could find the meaning in that pretty easily. Don't focus on all the negative that's going on around you. Don't focus on the world. There's it's cold, it's going to be cold. Focus on the force. That's where your warmth comes from. That's where life comes from. And so I thought it was a great moment. It really showed a lot of Gela's maturity also. And I thought it was a great little moment right there, kind of a farewell moment for the two of them. I really enjoyed that moment a lot.
If Gela had died in this book, my dad said he would have never picked up another Star Wars book again. He literally told me, he goes, I really think if Gela died in this book, I'd be done. Like I would just be done. Like I can't do it. Like, why are you doing this to me? And I was like, I don't disagree with you. That would have been a gut wrencher, but ultimately she lives. And let's wrap this one up here. Her and Axel have a little, like finally understand one another, and they finally are honest with each other, and their relationship has a nice conclusion where Axel has agreed to give himself up and go to prison. He's on prison in Coruscant, but due to some of the things he did on the Night of Sorrow, it's not like they lessened his sentence, but he is in a lighter, place on Coruscant where he's going to have some freedom to rehabilitate. And Gela has agreed to come visit him from time to time, and their friendship is going to endure. And he still calls her his Jedi Knight, which is classic Axel. Like, I'm going to try to charm you to the end. And Keong's like looking forward to being able to just cultivate this relationship, with her son. But the real juicy stuff comes at the end of the book when Creighton and Yoda get together. They've just had the funeral for the fallen Jedi. Creighton has taken on Enya Keen as his Padawan. Oh my gosh, I can't. I have to apologize, Brian. I just completely glossed over Zirium Von Tu's.
You did. I was wondering when you were going to bring it up.
Oh my gosh. I apologize. I feel like I should be punished for this.
Basically, to wrap it up pretty quick, to put it in a nutshell, there's quite a bit to it, but to wrap it in a nutshell,
But to
while the
put their
Jedi,
story in a nutshell, oh my
yeah, I
gosh.
know, I'm sorry. Hey, you forgot all about
I
it.
know, but
So
like I
I'm
know I'm like upset with myself right now. Like my two favorite characters from the space.
basically
So many
they
Jedi, too many
find a
Jedi.
starship on Donna in one of the hangars, and they're basically giving air support from above while all the Jedi are fighting down below, fighting the Path and the Nameless and everything like that. They're basically in the starship up top. But in the middle of all the battle,
Yes.
pirates show up like out of nowhere. Like all these scavenger pirates show up just for no reason at all, to just jump into the middle of everything. And so Fantu and Ziri try to get back to their home planets to get help.
Like get the communication going so they
Right.
can get it like support.
And the ship doesn't quite make it. It doesn't quite. I don't remember if it fell out of hyperspace. I think it fell out of hyperspace, if I'm not mistaken. And they were close enough. They were able to kind of get a message out, and their fleets came and picked them up and then took them back to Dalna to finish the fight and to give reinforcement to the Jedi fighting the Path.
Right.
And that's basically how the Jedi took out the Path and was able to finally overcome.
We have to talk about. I can't just gloss over it. I'm sorry, I can't.
It's fine.
They were so worried that no one was going to show up because they
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on with their planets. But then their planets joined together to send the aid to them to protect their heirs. It was like they weren't there, and they were trying to cling to hope. And their two planets came to pick them both up, and Aram and Arrow together forged their future of unity, which was fantastic. And then I have to point out when the pirates showed up, and then also when they're trying to fight like some of the Path people as well.
Yeah.
Ziri's like, Fantu's like, we have no backup. We should probably stay out of sight. And Ziri literally calms them and says, you want to fight? Like, come and get it.
Come and get
like,
it. Yeah.
Goes, it's going to be bumpy. Sorry. And he's like, because Ziri is a warrior. Like, she's a warrior. And she's like, I'm not backing down from a challenge. And she just eggs on like all these ships because she's trying to get attention away from the Jedi on the ground.
Right.
But that was really funny. Yes.
Yeah.
And so they're there. They decide to sign the peace treaty themselves this time.
Right.
And it officially gets signed and everything on Coruscant, and it's all good. Everything works out pretty well for them. And that it's
the forever war is over.
Yes. And it's a tough future for them, but they're going to be okay. And I hope we get some more stories with them at some point along the way, because those characters, Gela, like I tell you, like these characters, I want to dive more as much as we can into these characters. Like in Tales, like honestly, in Tales of the Jedi, it's like perfect opportunity for them to show some of these High Republic stories. Like they could do a Night of Sorrow Tales of the Jedi episode or something. And you don't have to have a lot of context other than this is an ancient battle taking place. Imagine people watching that and just seeing like the Nameless show up. And they're like, what just happened? Yeah. I just think that would be a cool way to introduce people to that era. Yeah. So the final conversation, Creighton's son, Yoda, and Creighton's talking to him about these creatures. And we find out Yoda's like aware of these creatures.
Yeah.
And he's been aware. And he alludes to something like a danger even greater than these creatures. Like there is like these creatures are horrible. The Nameless are, dangerous, and their planet they're from needs to be remain, secret as well. But he goes, there's something beyond that. And in Defy the Storm, we finally start getting some hints to what that is. I don't know. Have you read Defy the Storm yet?
I haven't got that far yet. I'm in the middle of Eye of Darkness right now.
We finally have gotten some hints to what that might be, and it's terrifying to think about. It's like a nibble. It's not like I think the next
Just
book's
enough.
gonna like give you the full-fledged, version of what's going to happen.
Sweet.
And so you're thinking, okay, so like what are the Jedi gonna do? And Yoda says, we're gonna cover this up. Like this can't get out.
Yeah.
And Creighton's like, okay, like so they delete all records of this of the Nameless from the archives. They keep the Night of Sorrow and everything, but they eliminate any records of the Nameless from the archives.
Such a Jedi thing to do. They
don't tell any of the other Jedi what happened. They keep that part a secret. And what happens is they, don't want, because they know that if word gets out about these creatures, it could destroy the order. It could destroy everything and up in the balance that they've built. But they do choose to hide and suppress all of it. And then we see 150 years later with Marky and Ro and the Nile, which we're going to get into phase 1 here in the coming episodes. We're going to see the fact that, this choice to cover up the nameless and everything going on with them, it's going to come back and bite them in the butt for sure. Who would have thought that covering up something like this would actually have consequences?
Jedi covering something up? What? They would never. That's the most Jedi thing ever.
As their temple is built on a Sith temple.
On a Sith temple. Oh my God.
And I know we joke about the Jedi sometimes. We joke about it and, them covering things up. But something that is really refreshing about the High Republic, and when Nate put this in his review for The Living Force, which is the book set in the prequel era. It is refreshing to have stories still, though, where the Jedi are the heroes, because when we get some of these stories where it can feel like, oh my God, yeah, the Jedi suck. Like, Rise of the Red Blade, where it's like the Jedi suck. And they do totally suck to a certain extent. Yeah. But they are capable of being the heroes. And we see this era where they are fully the heroes of the galaxy. Flawed, but still the heroes nonetheless. And that's one thing I really loved about this book as well. But any final thoughts on Cataclysm?
I loved this book so much. I actually read Path of Vengeance before I read this one, which after reading the two, it makes more sense to read this one before Path of Vengeance. The two basically happen concurrently.
Right.
We're going to talk a lot about kind of the stuff we talked about tonight, next week when we do Path of Vengeance. But that seems like it's the true end of phase 2.
Yes, it is.
That one does. And so you basically see the whole Night of Sorrows, from another point of view,
other perspectives,
another perspective.
Even like almost like the villain side perspective.
Yes, exactly. It's from the villain's point of view. I love that you said that. That's awesome. It's basically from like the mother's point of view and from everything else that's going on.
And
so we'll talk about that next week. Yes, I love it. But
we get into Olivia and
yes, I love Olivia
and Maddie again from the comics. Like it's a fun.
It's another one of those books where a bunch of storylines converge onto each other, and
it's Cavan Scott, so like he can't argue with Cavan Scott.
Yeah, he gets a chef's kiss. I love Cavan Scott. He writes some amazing stuff. But yeah, I absolutely love this book a lot. It felt like a perfect sequel to Convergence. And this is honestly, if you want to read this particular book by itself, you really can't. You really can't. Like, this is one you have to have basically read everything up leading up to it to get to this point, And so I love this book so much. I'm with you. It's one of my favorites. I don't know if I'd make it my number one, because I'm still a simp for Lost Stars and Bloodline and for Fallen Star. Those are like, I love those books, but this one's up there for me. I absolutely adore this book.
It's amazing. I love it so much. Thank you for joining us on the Timeline Show this week. You can feel free to check out last week's episode where we go through the Battle of the Jeddah crossover and follow along with us as we journey through the entire timeline of Star Wars. There is no shortage of stories to tell, so we're going to be here for a while. We're going to be here when we're 90 years old and we finally finish all the sequel trilogy stuff.
Back in my day.
I remember when this book came out in 2022.
There were books back then?
People are like, what are books? By that point, we just input the information straight into our brains.
Yeah, basically.
By the time we get through with this. But thanks for joining us. You can join us here every Monday night. Usually is when these episodes drops. Be looking for those. You can, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you're on Spotify, please give us, a follow there and a 5-star review. That would be fantastic. And as always, on Thursday nights at 10 o'clock Eastern time, you can join us for Star Wars Newsnet Live, wherever you are on social media. You can check us out here on YouTube, Star Wars Newsnet Live every Thursday. I believe, Ryan, we got about 20 minutes right now as of this recording before we're about to hop on live tonight. So
that's right.
It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. We got a lot of juicy stuff to talk about.
Yes, we do.
Just a little thing called the Asajj Ventress coming back to Star Wars animation. So for Light and Life, we will see y'all next week.
Have a good one.